Welcome to the Dave Palmer Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palmer.
Hi, welcome to the Dave Palmer Show. And with me in this episode, I have an entrepreneur, high performance coach, a storyteller, a martial artist, and he also helps leaders and entrepreneurs look sexy and naked, as well as finding a heightened level of clarity, energy, courage, productivity, and influence on their journey to another level of success in their life. Deano, Delpleashct, welcome to the Dave Palmer Show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Dave. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure to have you here as well, Deano. Pleasure to have you here. And of course, good pleasure because we have some kind of connections. You could be my cousin, actually. All I know, you're from my family's island. My family background from my mum's side is St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Wow,
so that's weird.
wow.
Are you there live and kicking now, or are you?
Right now I'm in Shanghai, China, actually.
You are in China, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm in London at the moment. So yeah, so that's how connections go. Our blood sort of like, circulates around the world, doesn't it? Like that.
I tell you.
yeah. So that's good. We've got another Vinci. Well, a first time Vinci, I think, on the show.
Oh wow.
So that's
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And also we're going to be talking about your coaching and programs that you're doing at the moment. But I know you've had a bit of a journey, and I know you're in China now, and you had to go back to St. Vincent. But tell us about your journey. You've done quite a few things, and you also was a martial artist.
Yeah.
I was a track athlete, so I'm going to tell you this now. And I competed for St. Vincent and the Grenadines at the Commonwealth Games.
Respect.
So, and you know the Ballantyne brothers.
Yes, I'm familiar with the Ballantyne brothers. They're quite popular.
They're good friends of mine. So
oh, nice. Okay.
So I shared a room with one of the brothers in the Commonwealth Games.
Okay.
He did the marathon, so they're both marathons.
Yeah.
So there you are. That's one one of the nice. But you used to do martial arts, and that obviously helps. The mindset helps, doesn't it, with the coaching? A lot of martial arts,
definitely.
They've sort of gone into coaching and training and things like that, and gone far.
I think it's one of the major players in the amount of discipline that I have as an individual. Initially I got into martial art to start protecting myself because I used to get into a lot of fights, when I was younger.
This
I
is
went to a very
in St. Vincent.
in St. Vincent. Yeah. But when I start martial arts, I fought less. So
when you started it, you fought less.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It teaches you all that, I suppose, doesn't it? Respect, control.
Yeah, definitely.
Things like you can sense when something's going to happen. You probably dodge it more because you can see the moves. Yeah. Psychologically, verbally, you're thinking the same thing. I've dodged. You're using kind of mental martial arts in your mind, aren't you, when you're talking to people? Things like that, to avoid situations. Conflict resolution, if you like, it helps you with that, doesn't it?
Most definitely.
Yeah. So that's good. Whereabouts in St. Vincent are you from, actually?
I moved a lot. I started in Camden Park. I started from the age of 0 to 12 in Camden Park. And then after we moved out.
Is that Leeward or Windward side?
Yeah, that's Leeward. That's the Leeward side.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Where it's less breezy on that side.
Yeah. So most people would prefer that side then.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And then we moved to Kettles, which is not too far from Camden Park, and finally we moved to Pembroke, which is closer to like Leyu area where they have a lot of the fishing and that.
I've heard of Lily.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. Well, I mean, so certainly we can talk forever about St. Vincent, but we're not here. We want to talk about inspiring people with what you do.
Yeah.
So tell us about your journey. Before you got into doing the high performance coaching and obviously your entrepreneurship journey. Tell us about that before you.
Well, it's quite interesting. Like, I left my island about, say, 9 years ago. Like at that point in my life, a part of me felt like I needed something more. At that point, I was a technical instructor. I train young adults how to repair the computers, how to use the computer. But I just feel like I needed something more. So I had the opportunity to come to China to study on a scholarship.
That's why.
And yeah. And when I got here, my program was information engineering. And I didn't really know much about what information engineering was. I just wanted to do something concerning engineering.
Yeah.
But say after my first year in China, I really fell in love with the language itself. And I
Right.
kind of wanted to change my major to the Chinese language, but there was no opportunity for that. So, going through experiencing the culture for the first year, I was like, you know what? I don't really want to be an engineer anymore, but I like to have the freedom to explore and see what I really want to do. So when I got to the university, I realized that they were offering a program in English, and I grabbed the opportunity to take it because in my mind I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do my degree in English, it would give me that freedom to explore. Because
Yeah.
originally I was meant to do my degree in Chinese, in the Chinese language, and learning the language for 1 year, then studying in it, that would have been really hectic. So during that time, I had the opportunity to do my degree in English, and it gave me the freedom that I asked for. For some strange
Yeah.
reason, I have this thing whenever I ask for something, God magically, opened the doors for me to get it.
Yeah.
And during that time, I was one of the main person who was helping my friends a lot, my peers getting things done because at that point I could have speak the language, but most of them just coming to the new university couldn't. So I was like that go-to person. Like if you had a problem and you're a foreigner and you need somebody to translate and speak, they'll come to me. And
Okay.
you'll go take people wrong, sometimes you go out. And then I noticed that the lifestyle that my friends were living wasn't really, serving them. They'll go to the club,
Okay.
they'll get intoxicated. And I can remember
Okay.
this one time I was with my friend and he was so drunk, like he was so helpless. And I was
This
there
is in
looking
China
at
or
this.
back home?
Yeah, this is in China. This is in China.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe just to give you a bit about like some of the things that I did on the island, I was heavily involved in youth development. So I did a lot of
Yeah.
work
Okay.
with the Caribbean Healthy Lifestyle program there, where we
Okay.
use sports to teach young people, healthy
Yeah.
lifestyle habits and
Yes.
skills.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, maybe I can do something here in China on my campus. And I was telling my friends about it. And, they were a bit excited, but they never really took it on. So nothing really happened to that extent. And I got myself in a little situation where I was in a tough financial spot. My
Yeah.
relationship wasn't going well and things wasn't going well at school as well. And I didn't tell my parents or anybody about it. So I just had to figure out stuff on my own. And I can remember being like, I was at a point where I was really depressed, Dave. I can
Yeah.
remember being on the seventh floor of my school dormitory balcony, and the thought in my head was to jump. And at that point, I
Yeah.
realized that's not something that I would tell myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know something had to be wrong, and then I came across some tapes from Les Brown,
Ah, Les
and
Brown.
as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. He's
yeah,
good.
Les Brown
Yeah. Yeah.
and Jim Run. And when I
Yeah.
started listening to those tapes, it was as if they were speaking to me directly.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I started doing is I would get up at 5 a.m. in the morning. Every morning I'll go running. Every
Hmm.
morning I'll go running. And because I was a
Yeah.
martial artist,
Yes.
when I
Yeah.
run, I'll go to the playing field and I'll practice some
Do
of
your
my,
workout. Yeah.
yeah, do my
Technique.
workout.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And as time went by, my friends started noticing something different about me. And they were inquiring because as I run and work out, my body started changing in a way that I didn't realize my body was changing.
Yeah.
And just to make a long story short, eventually I had one person joining me to the playing field, two person joining me to the playing field, until I came to a point where I built a community with over 40 person joining me at that playing field every night. And it was so funny. I knew nothing about fitness or the fitness industry. I just had a martial art background, so I just taught
Yeah.
what I knew. But one of the things that I also did at that playing field was that everything I listened in those tapes, I was teaching. So at the end of every workout, I'll give some sort of speech or tell a story to the guys, just to keep them inspired and motivated. And it kind of blew up to something big on the campus at that time, and we call it the Spartans family. So
Okay.
initially, we had our first event, and that was the first time I've ever organized anything like that. And at the end of the event, there was this Chinese guy who really liked what we were doing, and he approached me because he wanted to invest some money into what we were doing. And that was my first taste of entrepreneurship and what it was. I didn't know what was entrepreneurship. I knew nothing for no business form, no formal business background, whatever. So I went head in. But as a result of listening to those Jim Rohn and Les Brown tape, they always say that your first business would fail 90% of the time. So I already had that mindset that I'm gonna go in this to learn, and more or less it's gonna fail, and that's what happened. But luckily, out of that opportunity, that investor was a student of our entrepreneurial program that he suggested to me. And at the end of my bachelor degree, I enrolled in this entrepreneurship master's program, and that 2 years of doing that literally changed my perspective when it comes to doing business. I learned so much as an engineering student going into business. It's like you're lost. But
Yeah.
that integration and that holistic experience changed the way I look at business and changed the way I look at creating value for others. And that more or less took me down the path of becoming more entrepreneurial in my endeavors, and also question like what do I want to do as an individual. And I realized that I don't want to just be a fitness coach or somebody who help people, transform their body. And
Yeah.
at the end
But
of my
it helps, but
master,
you wanted to do
yeah,
more.
yeah,
That's what you're
yeah,
saying. Yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I wanted to do more because I realized, telling people how to do a few push-ups and pull-ups doesn't really
Yeah.
get them the results. There's
No,
something underlying and much deeper,
that's right.
to
Yeah.
their results. And
Yeah.
at the end of my master's program, I actually had a situation where I had to leave earlier, and because my granny passed away. So I had to
Okay.
leave at the end in 2019. So I went
Right.
back to St. Vincent for the funeral. Didn't know
Yeah.
COVID was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's the
during
other
that
thing. Yeah.
time, yeah, yeah. So I didn't graduate. Most of my classmates graduated because I had some things with my thesis, and then I left. So I
Right.
was expecting to return to China, say March the following year. Then I start hearing the news about COVID, everything start happening. So now I'm home and I'm wondering, okay, I'm not graduating. I can't go back to China, and I'm just gonna be home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I had this idea of doing business on my mind, becoming a full-time fitness coach. That's what I
Yeah.
want to do.
Yeah.
So one of the first thing that came to my mind, okay, if I'm gonna become a full-time fitness coach, maybe I need to get certification. So I went and I find an online program and I got my
Yeah. Yeah.
certification. I
Yeah.
start doing the usual. And then at that point, I'm like, wow, this marketing thing is not as easy as it seems, when you're on a different stage.
It's
And
a big.
I
Yeah.
remember, yeah, I remember having a conversation with a few friends, and they were like, during this COVID period, it's really easy to get in contact with people who's really playing a game at a higher level. Like one of my friend had a friend who actually reached out to this director, and because COVID's
Oh.
happening, these busy people, they're not as busy.
Yeah. That's
So
true. So they
that,
got time to
yeah,
talk. Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah,
know what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
It's
So that
amazing,
that
isn't
give,
it?
yeah, yeah, it's really amazing. So that kind of gave me that idea. I'm like, okay, who can I reach out to? So I start making my list of people, who I really admire, who's really doing what I want to do. So one of the first person who I put was Tony Robbins, and I put
Oh
Tim
yeah. Yeah.
Ferriss. I list a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
podcasts and his books. So I put my
Yeah.
list of
He's.
names, and I literally went and texted them, and I sent all of
Oh,
them a
okay.
message. I can't remember what
Yeah.
message I sent,
Yeah.
but but I sent all of them a message. I didn't get any replies. I didn't get any replies. But then I came across this one particular guy. His name was Vince Del Monte, and he's a online coach for fitness coaches. And I was like, oh, this is the
Okay.
exact guy who I want to work with,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And I literally sent him a message. I even said, because I was a bit hopeless at that point, I said, I know you're not gonna even reply to this message, but I'm sending it anyway. And he replied. He replied, and we had a conversation. I told him about my situation, and he's like, yeah, what's up? And at that point, I only had enough money to buy my plane ticket to go back to China. So at that
Oh,
point,
okay.
his
Oh, so you're still in St.
program,
Vincent when he was doing all
yeah,
that
it was still in St. Vincent.
contacting. Yeah. Yeah.
I hadn't even graduated. I wasn't working, so I wasn't
Ah,
making,
okay.
say, any money,
Yeah. Yeah.
money
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then I told him, I was like 100% honest with him about my situation. And then he decided to cut me a better deal as a student. So at that point, I paid him, say, 97 US dollars monthly to be a part of his mastermind program. And that was more or less, eye opener, into, the whole essence of sales, marketing, and really building a fitness business online. So in
Yeah.
2020, I did that. I did that for the better half of the year, and I put most of my time into doing that. And that's how the Vince to the World podcast started, because I always like to maximize whatever opportunity I have, whether I get it for a lower price or it's free. And I was in a group with all these professional coaches, so I know I love to have conversation, and that's how I learn. So what I decided to do, I decided to invite some of these coaches to have a conversation with me, around the things that we love, and it will be value for them, value for me, and value for whoever would like to enjoy the conversation. And I did that, and boiling down to the end of the year, my girlfriend was still in China, so she was always like, when am I gonna come back? So we were literally trying to figure out ways for me to get back to China at that point as well, while I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
doing my business.
yeah,
And I wasn't really keen in taking the risk because of everything that's going on.
yeah.
But
Of
then,
course. Yeah,
something tell me, let me just try. Then
yeah.
I did a
So
bit of
this was when,
thinking.
this year or last year when the
That
COVID?
was 2020. That was
Okay,
last
yeah.
year,
So it's
2020.
really, there's still like a lot of lockdowns going on and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Maybe just
yeah,
starting to open up, you know.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And it's crazy, man. I'm even surprised I'm even here in China right now,
Oh,
because
okay, yeah.
initially, to get back to China, you needed to have an invitation from a business. They had to
Yeah.
provide you like a special letter for you to go and apply for your visa. And I
Right.
was in tech, even though my direction, I'm not going in that direction anymore, but I was in tech. So I figured that, getting a job that is tech related would be, quite straightforward for me. So there was an opportunity for me to be a tech support engineer in China. And I applied for the job. I went through the interview process. I got the job. They sent me
Yeah.
the PO letter,
Oh, that's
and
good.
I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
went through the process of
Because
getting my visa. Yeah.
it must be pretty hard in well, Shanghai. I suppose there's a lot of expats. A lot of it's more
Mm.
international, isn't it? A bit
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Hong Kong.
very.
It's a kind of international
Yeah,
commercial hub, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
So, but generally in China, it's kind of very difficult to have that happen, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or am I wrong?
especially if you're outside, especially if you're outside of
Yeah,
China.
yeah. It's,
Yeah.
oh, right. You have to be in there, stay in there to. But
Yeah,
then if you're staying there, you need a visa. So that's the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah. So.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, so anyway, so that's what you're doing now in China, but then you're
yeah.
building your coaching courses as well at the same time, yeah?
Yes, yes,
How did that all
yes.
evolve from there? Because obviously, you said your side where you now started to get in touch with these top coaches and
Yeah.
podcasters, while you're St. Vincent. So did
Mm,
you have the idea of building that side of the business, which you're doing now, from
mm.
while you was
Well,
working there? How did that, tell us about that journey then?
initially when I started my online fitness business, things were more or less slow. I literally had 4 clients that year,
Yeah,
4 clients. And during with my experience with those 4 clients, I realized I spent most of my time coaching them on calls than I did coaching them about the program. And they
right,
find more of their values on our coaching calls than they did in the program, because the program is more or less straightforward. You know what you need to do, you have what you need to eat, but the work comes with the lifestyle change. Some of the habits that they have that's really holding them back. How are they scheduling their day so that they can make
yeah,
sure they get their workout in. And at that point, I started to realize, man, I actually enjoy, this way of coaching than I do, in the fitness way of coaching. And that's when I went looking again, and I can remember Brendan Bushaw was another teacher who I listened to a lot. His podcast, I remember in 2017, he launches his book, The High Performance Habits. And
right, yeah,
when I started listening to that book, I was like, this is exactly what I need. So at that point, I remembered him, and I went looking again. I went looking, and I came across this high performance coaching program. So I went through the program. I found the program, and I went through the program, just experiencing the entire experience. And when I went through that program, I heard the how to say NLP. I heard
yeah,
him
NLP,
mention
yeah,
NLP, neuro linguistic programming. So
yes, yeah,
after coming across neuro linguistic programming, I was thinking, if most of these programs are based on the frameworks and the concept of neuro linguistic programming, might as well I learn neuro linguistic programming. So one of the things that I did, I went looking for neuro linguistic programming teacher. And I realized that there was one in Shanghai. And I literally reached out to him, and we more or less connected, but not connected fully, right? And say literally a few months ago, I connected to the coaching community here, and I've been quite active. I entered a few coaching programs that was offered. And then that same individual who was delivering the neuro-linguistic programming coaching training, he was offering a scholarship. And that at that point, I didn't want to apply for the scholarship because the scholarship had, it was like more or less a tour relationship. Because I told myself, if I gonna do the certification, I want to do it and be all in. But
Yeah.
my girlfriend told me to apply it still. I
Yeah.
applied and I ended up getting the scholarship. So right
Yeah.
now I'm in the process of completing my neuro-linguistic programming coaching. And
Okay.
as
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
result of that, I'm building out my coaching practice. I'm building out my programs so that I can launch in the next 2 months from now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know you've got a program going at the moment. Tell us about that, because I know it's looking like you're going full time now on this. So
Yes,
tell us about
yes.
this new program you're working on now.
Yeah. Well, I call this the 21-day high performance leader movement. My mission that I believe is to help leaders, look sexy and naked. I want to make leadership sexy, more or less.
Yeah.
And I want to look at my edge. One thing, I've been a fitness coach for, say, most of my 20s, so I want
Yeah.
to add that mix to what I'm
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
offering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all related, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, yeah, more
Body,
or less
mind,
it's all
body.
related.
So.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And most of my transformation mentally has came from my physical transformation.
Yeah.
Dispelling a lot of beliefs that I never knew was possible with my body physically. So this will be more or less a 21-day program, which would have in the elements of, physical movement as well as mental mindfulness exercise. I'm not
Right. Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
if you are aware of the term what is it? Positive intelligence.
I've heard of emotional intelligence, but obviously there's a lot of talk around positive, so that must be
Yeah,
like obviously there's emotional intelligence as well as EQ as well as IQ. But now
yeah,
this is a
yeah,
new one to me now. So
yeah,
yeah, tell me
picky.
about that.
So
PQ,
yeah,
yeah,
So the whole concept of PQ, positive intelligence, is known as there's a positive intelligence quotient, and
yeah,
the term was coined by Dr. Shazad Shamin. I actually did a coaching program that he was offered to coaches a few months ago, and it was really, how to say, it changes my approach to meditation more or less. Because he did a lot of the background research around neuroscience
yeah,
and positive psychology and performance. And one thing that he's realized is that there's certain neurons in our brain that when we perform certain action, we
yeah,
tend to activate those neurons that are responsible for creativity, that are responsible for high performance, that are responsible for, those positive emotion compared to the negative, how to say, emotions such as fear and stress that most individual would use to motivate them. So I also took some of the information that I've learned from that program and implemented into my program. Just the, how to say, the more hands-on application so that leaders can have the benefits not only physically but as well as mentally. And I also would like to teach these high performance habit from the Brendan Burchard book itself, about
yeah, yeah,
clarity as well
yeah,
as energy as well as productivity. Because one of the things that most individual, not even leaders, struggle with in terms of starting a new workout routine is managing their time,
yeah,
finding clarity around their life in particular, or being able to know how to keep their energy level at a point where they can perform consistently throughout the day. Because I always see individual complain about not having enough time, but I don't think time is the issue, it's energy. Because just
yeah,
imagine if you can execute with the same amount of energy when you get up at the end of the day, time will never be an issue. And if you're clear about what you need to get done each time in the day, then you won't be wasting times on things that matters. A quote that I really like from Brendan Burchard is that what's achievable isn't always important. So I think finding clarity helps us to focus on the things them that are important. So that way, not only can we take care of ourselves, but we can also find time to take care of the people that we love, as well as the career that we want to embody for ourselves. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, there's a lot said about that. That's quite interesting. So if someone, if I say like myself now, obviously I'm quite interested in this program. Anyone listening now could, what would this program involve, or how can they get involved with it?
Okay, well, for this particular program, the idea would be to build a tribe around the program. So that's why it's
Okay.
the fit leader, the high performance leader movement. So I'll
Yeah.
be carefully vetting each individual who will be joining this program because I've had experience with creating community and I realized that the first five or three people you bring into your community would more or less be that cornerstone that you're building your community on. So what I've
Yeah.
done, I've created a survey where I'll be vetting individuals who will be coming through the
Yeah.
program, and I've shared the link with you. It's Dino Delplesh. I don't know
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you'd like me to spell it out. Dino Delplesh.
Uh,
That go
yeah.
ahead.
Spell it out. I can also put it on the show notes, but yeah, spell it
Yeah,
out anyway in case anyone wants to write it now.
yeah. So that's Dino Delplesh, Deano
Yeah.
Delpleash dot Mike CRM. That's MikeCRM.com, and then that's a slash UNZILC number two. So once they go to that link, they will have a quick survey that they'll need to fill. So that way, I'll make sure that the individual is the right fit for the program, and what I'm offering would be able to help that individual. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that we are creating a win-win relationship for leaders
Yeah.
as well as for myself. Because it's always best to work with people who would you can guarantee results instead of giving them half-ass results. So that's one of the reasons why I want to do it in this way, as I'm
Yeah.
about to
Yeah.
launch this new program. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as I said, anyone listening, I'll also have this link on the show notes. So if you finish listening and thought, oh, okay, what's that link again? You can just click right on it
Yeah,
and
yeah.
get right into the program, and then Dino will be in touch with you from there. Excellent, Dino. What's it like in Shanghai now? Then, I mean, it must be. Yeah, I mean, I was in the Philippines at the same time zone. So, but yeah, mate, I mean, obviously China's got going. They've got their economy going. They were back in
Mm.
business. It's okay now, is it? In terms of
Yeah, it's quite
things.
okay here. Things are changing a bit.
Yeah.
Before, we didn't needed to wear masks when we were going into, like, the malls or restaurant.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah,
now
yeah.
recently, as there's been this new Delta strain,
That's
things are a
right. Yeah,
bit
yeah,
changing a bit. But
yeah.
pretty much otherwise than that, it's okay. Maybe there's certain cities that you're not able to travel to too freely because of what's going on right now. But a few
That's
months ago,
right. Yeah,
things were
yeah,
perfectly back to normal. But it's,
yeah,
with COVID, it's like it's up and down.
yeah, yeah. Well, recently in the UK, they totally, got rid of the lockdown, so everyone was free to do
Oh,
whatever they
wow.
want. But I think they're still
Okay.
because it's because of vaccination. It's high percentage,
Ah,
nearly
okay.
80%. So
Okay.
I think, but obviously they've got challenges with like nightclubs and bars and
Yeah, yeah,
restaurants.
yeah. Yeah,
They call
yeah.
it the three Ds: drinking, dancing, and dining. It's like they still got to manage that. So
Mm,
there's still work to do. But yeah,
yeah.
whereas when I was in the Philippines, well, actually right now Philippines have totally locked down because of this new
Oh,
Delta.
wow.
So they've gone back to everyone totally in their house and not allowed out.
Oh, wow.
Like it
Oh,
was from the
wow.
beginning. So it's been like that for a while. I think it's going to be like for 2 weeks, maybe
Okay,
extended.
okay.
But yeah, we'll see what happens there.
Mm.
And yeah, okay. I see. Also, you was either on a podcast or you're thinking of doing a podcast or something as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, initially I started a podcast, the Vincent to the World podcast, when I was in
Ah,
St.
okay.
Vincent. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
did
yeah,
10 episodes. But now
yeah,
as I'm building out myself, I'm positioning myself now as a high performance coach. I was
yeah,
thinking about doing something a bit different, targeted towards more, the high performance edge of what I'm doing. I had a big mental debate about, maybe just keep the Vincent to the World podcast and just do it on a season. I
yeah,
still keep it the same way. So I'm more or less in between, but I think I finally decided to, just streamline everything and position myself as a high performance coach because
yeah,
that's what I like to deliver moving forward. Like
yeah.
the idea of the Vincent to the world, I didn't know where I was gonna be even at this point
Right.
because
Yeah,
of
yeah,
all the
yeah.
uncertainty. And it's
Yeah,
something that I did, as just being who I am.
yes.
Yeah.
I know. It's
Yeah.
something it evolved as you was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
not experimenting, but just trying things and then oh,
Yes,
this is
yes,
what's
yes.
working.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see with the coaching, obviously, kind of like with myself, you just tie it into what's
Mm.
so the podcast will add to the coaching, for the bigger
Yes,
picture and things
yes,
like that, really. Yeah,
yes,
so a lot of
yes,
tying
most
together.
definitely.
Well, as well
Yeah.
as being, podcasts can also
Mm.
be entertaining in an entity in its own as well, So
Yeah.
some people just like to listen to podcasts, some people want to get involved in the coaching, or both,
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
So. Excellent.
And
Well,
it was,
Deano.
yeah.
Go on. No, go on, carry on.
Now, I was saying, yeah, people can still go to the Vinci to the World podcast, had some great
Yeah.
conversation, had some Vinci trivia, you can learn a bit about St.
Yeah.
Vincent and the Grenadines as well. So, yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's like broadcasting, TV, radio. There's lots of, old shows people like to watch, or even listening to, go back to what the news was like when certain things happening back in, history and things like that. So,
Yeah.
It's always there, isn't it? Really, it's
Yeah,
always there in the
yeah.
archives, always there. So,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
that's why it's called a podcast asset. So anyway, there you go. Well, Deano, it's been a great pleasure speaking to another fellow Vinci.
Yeah, man.
Obviously British-born Vinci, but it's still the same. All embraced the same. Yes. So, and I hope we can see how you're getting on another time and have you back on the show and talk about the success of the program and everything else. But
really appreciate being here, and really thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my voice and share what I'm doing. Thank you.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or head over to my website davepalmer.com and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.